and welcome back to my channel. My name is Stasha and I'm a canine behaviorist and search and rescue dog trainer. This is my Belgian sheepdog or Belgian Groenendael named Castora, and she is going to be helping me demonstrate today. So today we are going to be discussing how to get your dog to stay. Now, there are a few things that you are going to need to practice this exercise. First thing is obviously going to be your dog. Next thing is going to be a leash, either a standard 5 to 6 foot leash or a long line, or both. And lastly, you're going to need a bunch of treats. Now, there are a couple of things to consider when we're teaching stay. The first one is that stay is technically a multi-part command. So there's two different things that we have to teach. The first one is obviously the stay cue, right? Making our dog remain in one spot indefinitely. And the second one is going to be your release cue. And what the release cue is it's a word or a hand signal or some sort of gesture letting the dog know that they are free to go. The second thing that's going to be very important to consider is your timing on rewards. When you're trying to accomplish anything in dog training or achieve success with a specific command, you have to know exactly when to reward in order to get the most optimal outcome. When we're teaching stay, we have to think about what are we trying to achieve, right? We're trying to achieve the dog not moving. So we are only going to reward when the dog is not moving. Not when they move towards us, not when they move away from us, not when they maybe demonstrate a different behavior, and not after we give them the release cue, right? We are only going to reward the dog when they're staying. So now we are going to talk about the technique on how to teach stay. Now, when we start teaching stay, we're going to begin very slowly. One of the most common mistakes that I see my clients make is they try to push their dogs too far too fast. If you're working with a puppy, for instance, their threshold is going to be very, very low. If you've got a dog with separation anxiety, it's going to take a little bit longer. If you've got an anxious dog or an excitable dog or a dog that's very environmentally motivated, it might take a little bit longer. Only move as fast as your dog will let you, right? All that matters is we're making progress. Even if that progress is tiny, it does not matter. Now, when we start teaching this, we're not going to just tell the dog to stay and leave, right? We're not going to start moving backwards. We're not going to move at all. What we want to do is we really want to reinforce the fact we don't want the dog to move. So I'm going to get a bunch of treats and I'm going to pick either a sit or a down. I recommend starting by putting the dog in a different position than a stand because a stand is just way too easy for them to just leave at their leisure, right? A sit or a down, it takes a little bit more effort. So I'm going to get a few treats and I'm going to tell her to sit. Star, sit. Good girl. And then I'm going to reward. And I'm going to wait a second. And then I'm going to reward again. Now, if your dog is not this patient, you might have to force feed by rapidly distributing treats. She's a little bit older than puppy years or adolescence, so I can wait a little while before I reward. And I'm just going to stand here and do this until the dog looks settled. Once she looks settled, I'm going to make sure my leash is very loose, and I'm going to say stay, and I'm going to take a step back, forward, and reward. Then I'm going to take a couple steps back, couple steps forward, and reward. If she starts to move, especially when your dog is learning this, stop. Don't keep moving back because they're going to leave. So if I see her move, I'm going to stop and wait for her to settle before I come forward and reward her. Now, when you're doing this, it is critical to remember to always keep your leash loose. Dogs are very, very sensitive to leash pressure. So if they feel pulling because your leash is taut, it's going to cue them to leave. That's not their fault. So if you get to the end of your lead and your dog is doing amazing, just drop it. Right? Live. Good girl. Now at first, I'm going to try to get, between 1 and 5 feet away. And once I'm getting that successfully, I'm going to reward, and then I'm going to, okay. So okay is my release cue. You can use any release cue that you want. Okay, free, whatever. But when you are implementing your release cue, there's going to be a very specific order that you reward. So if I have her in a stay, I'm going to come up, give her the food reward, release her, and then no more treats. You never want to give your dog a treat after you've given them the release cue. At that point, their reward is freedom. The reason why we don't want to do this is because if once in a while they get reinforced for standing up and leaving, then when things get difficult, there's going to be a question in their mind about, well, maybe I can test this behavior and get something for it, right? The only consistent we want here is rewarding them when they are standing perfectly still, right? And that's the end of it. You can still praise your dog with no more food rewards after you give the release. I like to pair okay with a pat, especially at first, or the dog's name, because that way, if you've got your neighbor over, you have your dog in a stay, and you're talking, and you're like, oh, okay, your dog might think, oh great, I'm free, and then they'll run over and say hi to your neighbor, which you might not want. Now, when I start this, you guys might have seen, I'm backing up in a straight line, right? I'm not moving around and I'm not breaking eye contact. And the reason for that is breaking eye contact or moving directions, or changing directions, is a change of context. We want to start this nice and slow. So, once we get to the point where we can do that pretty successfully, give me 1 second to just make sure I have some treats in here. There we go. Alright, once we get to the point, we can make it, 5 to 10 feet successfully, and our dog is fine, right? Then we can start changing things up. So I'm going to show you again. Seats. Good girl. Live. So once I can get to about here, I'm going to step here, step sideways, walk forward, reward. And I'm going to maintain eye contact even though I'm changing direction. Now, if she gets up and moves, which she just did, I am going to bring her back to the exact spot that I left her. Hey girl, right here. Or as close to it as possible. Tell her to sit again. Give her the stay. Wait a second, and then reward again. I'll talk about this a little bit more in our troubleshooting section. Now, once I get to the point where I can walk side to side pretty comfortably, then I'm going to start breaking eye contact, right? This is a very sped up version. Don't expect that your dogs are going to let you move this quickly. My dogs have done quite a bit of training. They're a little bit older. Just take your time. So when I want to start breaking eye contact, I'm not just going to turn around and start walking away, because for most dogs, that will trigger them to leave. Start here. What I'm going to do is this. Live. Walk back, and then just whoop. So that break in eye contact is going to be less than 1 second. That gives the dog enough time to think, oh my God, maybe she's leaving, right? But not enough time to actually leave. Just like that. Now, after you can do that, then you're going to start making your circle slower. Once you've done this a little bit, you're making your circle nice and slow, then you're going to start implementing extra steps. So see how we're doing this very slowly? We're not just going to make a massive change in context. We're going to be very specific about the changes that we make to this. Okay. Now, one Once we've gotten to the point our dog can do this on this leash, then I would recommend changing them to a long line. The reason that I don't recommend just going from a 6-foot lead to no lead at all is because if your dog decides to get up and leave, you have to chase after them. For some dogs, that's a game, right? And then they're self-rewarding, which totally defeats the purpose. So once I've gotten to the point I can do this comfortably at about 6, 10 feet, then I'm gonna switch her to my long line. Now, I am using a 33-foot long line. This is just a synthetic material, not super expensive, but it works. So I'm just gonna switch, and then I'm gonna start here. Sit live. Make sure there's never any tension in that lead. Oops. So right there she left. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say no. I'm gonna bring her back. Come here, right here. Good girl. Seats, live. And then change it up. Change the way you're walking, right? You want to keep your dog guessing. That way they don't get preemptive. And then when I'm ready to release her, I'm just gonna walk forward, reward, and then, okay, then she's free. Okay, really quick, before we move to our next section, I just want to talk about a couple of things. So there's a couple of things to be conscious of when you're doing this. The first thing is, like I said, please try not to move too quickly. Every dog is different. Some dogs catch on super fast, some dogs don't. Next thing is start somewhere where there are no environmental distractions if possible, right? Stay requires a lot of patience, quite a bit of impulse control. So we want to start by making ourselves the highest motivator. That way we make the most progress. Once we can do this in a room with no other distractions, then we move to a different spot in the house. Then a different spot. Then maybe we introduce the family cat or another person. Then maybe we introduce a second dog, right? Nice and slow. Then maybe we take our dog outside. Start mixing it up, but don't move too quickly. Just because your dog can stay in your bedroom does not mean they'll stay at a football game, right? We want to work up to that and set ourselves and our dogs up for success. Another thing is try to keep this fun. If your dog does not have as long of an attention span, don't overdo it, right? We just want to practice a little bit at a time, reward them while they're still having fun, and then be done. Then practice more later. One last thing to remember before we talk a bit about troubleshooting, and I guess this is technically a troubleshooting thing, but I'll say it anyways, is some dogs are incredibly intelligent, and you'll find that they'll be doing really good, right? You can get to 10 feet, 15 feet, and they're doing amazing. But then all of a sudden, they start leaving as soon as you're 5 feet away. And then it happens again and again. So you take them back, you put them down, you tell them to stay, you reward them, and you start walking away. Then they leave again. This happens with a lot of clients. A lot of clients' dogs. And what can occur is dogs know when they're learning to stay, or they learn that they have to wait a long time to get reinforced. Sometimes, if we're rewarding them too fast on the stay, right, when we bring them back, we have them sit, we reward right away, they learn that they can up their rate of reinforcement by leaving. So they can get more treats for walking away than they can for staying there. Now, if that happens to you, where all of a sudden your dog makes a massive regression, all you have to do is change the way that you are treating, or the timing of your treating. So for instance, good girl, live. So if I walk here, right, I'm 10 feet away, I come back, reward. Typically, if I were to just be starting and I put her into a sit, I'm gonna reward right away, and then I'm gonna start walking back. Now, if I started, missing treats. All right, so if I put her into a sit, right, and I rewarded, and then she took off by herself, right? And this was happening over and over, and she was coming up and sitting by me. And I'm bringing her back, and it's happening again and again. What I'm gonna do is, instead of rewarding her right away on the sit, I'm gonna make some distance and then come back and treat. Just to teach her, okay, you're not getting anything for sitting anymore, right? You have to wait to get your treat. That can help that problem, or help resolve that problem pretty quickly. So you guys saw before, right? I tell her to sit and I treat and then I start walking away. If she starts leaving all the time, I'm going to come back, have her sit, and I'm gonna walk back a few steps, walk forward, and reward. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about troubleshooting. Okay, so troubleshooting your stay. There's a few different things that can happen that people get confused about when they're teaching stay. The first one is, what if my dog changes position as I'm walking away? And all that means is you put your dog in a down, maybe they get up into a sit. Or if you put your dog into a sit, maybe they go into a down. Is that going to ruin my stay? Should I be going back and putting them back in the position I left them? My answer to this is train however you expect your dog to behave in real life. So if you expect perfection from your dog because you're going to be doing obedience competitions, then by all means, if you leave your dog in a sit and they lay down because they're comfortable, all you have to do is go back, put them in a sit, and repeat that every time it happens, right? Until you've got that perfect. Now, if you're like me and you just want your dog to stay for as long as they need to, I don't care if they lay down, right? That doesn't matter. So if I have her in a sit and she lays down, I'm just gonna leave her because that tells me that she's getting comfortable and she's not moving away. The only thing that I am going to correct in this instance is her leaving this place right here. So another thing that can happen is dogs can start following their owners. And all that means is maybe I leave her in a stay and I walk back here and she quickly runs up to me and lays back down. And so I'm gonna be like, okay, Castora, stay, right? And then it's gonna happen again. Some people get confused because they're like, well, my dog is technically doing the right thing, but they're not staying in the same spot. So do I reward them? Definitely not. So if your dog starts following you, what I would recommend is just like how I did before when she stood up and started walking away, I just didn't make a big deal out of it. I brought her back, I put her back in the position, and I kind of started over. Now, sometimes dogs have thresholds for stay, where maybe it's as soon as you get out of eyesight, or as soon as you're a certain distance back. And all threshold is it's a point that the dog won't hold the stay anymore, right? It's a psychological thing that tells the dog, okay, staying is not worth the stress, so I'm going to leave. Now, if you find you're having a threshold issue where maybe every time I get to 15 feet, she gets up and follows me. No matter what I do, every time I get to 15 feet, she gets up and follows me. The way that you're going to fix this is you're going to work just under threshold. So if her threshold is about 15 feet, I am going to work consistently at about 14 and a half feet. And I'm going to keep coming back, rewarding, going back to 14 and a half feet, coming back, rewarding, until she's bored out of her mind. Once she's like, okay, whatever, she's sniffing the grass, then I'm going to get to my threshold area, which might be here, and I'm going to very rapidly break threshold and get back up and reward her as quickly as possible. A lot of times, just taking that extra step, right, and getting them super solid right before threshold can let you break threshold issues. So, I think that's pretty much it. Now, just remember the most important thing with stay is work as quickly as your dog lets you. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't assume because the advanced obedience dog can do a football field stay, your dog can. We have to work up to that. Make sure you go to as many different areas to generalize this behavior as possible. Implement your distractions slowly, and make sure that anytime they leave, they go right back where you left them until they're released. Thank you so much for watching my video today. If you have any questions or comments, please post them in the comments section below. If you like what you saw today, please subscribe to my channel. And I will be making more videos soon, so just keep your eye out for them. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.